Hey guys, my name is Iasmina and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video I want to share with you guys the books that I read since my last recent reads video, which was quite a while ago. I will link that up here and down in the description if you're interested, but yeah, I have a lot of books to talk to you guys about, so yeah, let's just honestly, let's just jump straight into it. And I will also talk about these books in the order of from my least favorite to my most favorite. Okay, so the lowest rated book in this video, so the lowest rated book that I've read recently is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F by Mark Manson. So this is a non-fiction sort of self-help book trying to teach you, you know, how to care less about things that affect your life in a negative way and how to, well, live a better life. However, I would say I gave this 1.5 out of 5 stars. I really did not like it. I think a big part of it is because I read a lot of books that sort of handle the same topic in a much better way than this. I felt like this was very rushed and it was a lot of random anecdotes that the author just kind of threw in there that didn't really have to do anything with the topic of the book. I just didn't like it. I didn't get anything out of it. Again, that's maybe because I've read better books that handle this topic. However, I would say that if you've never read anything like this before and you feel like you need something a bit, you know, a bit inspirational to help you, I would say give it a try. But if you've read similar books to this, then I would just say skip this because it brings absolutely nothing new to the table of sort of self-help, you know, live your life in a positive way kind of thing. So yeah. Then I read This Honesty is the Second Best Policy by David Mitchell. I read this on audiobook. I usually really like David Mitchell. I love him as a comedian and I really love a lot of his shows. So I was really excited to read a book by him. I didn't enjoy it very much because it was so focused on politics and specifically obviously British politics that I just honestly, it just went over my head. I didn't really have any connection to that part. I was hoping it was more about his life and anecdotes than what it was, and it was pretty much like 80% politics, like current politics. And obviously if that's something that you're interested to learn more about, then I think he does a really good job at explaining the current state of the British politics situation. But well, obviously it's a very biased opinion as well. It's his opinion on the whole situation. So you might not necessarily agree with what he's saying, but it was just very, very politics focused, and the other bits just, you know, it just didn't make up for the fact that I skipped most of this book. So yeah, not great, but David Mitchell is still, I feel like he's a great writer and I would love to try more of his books that maybe focus more on, you know, his own personal experiences with just life in general and not necessarily so focused on current politics in the UK. Next, I have a manga, and this is the first volume of Fruits Basket by Natsuki Takaya, and I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. I thought it was, well, it was really cute and really well done for what it was. I'll just give you a quick view of the sort of art style in this. I had seen the first few episodes of the anime years and years ago, and I was always just curious to pick up the manga and just read the manga because I don't think it's very long. I think there's only 12 volumes of this, correct me if I'm wrong. So this is about our main character who stumbles upon a house full of boys, full of cute boys who each transform into a different animal of the Chinese zodiac. I did enjoy it for what it was, and it is quite a long volume as well. I don't know if this special edition is special, because usually mangas are much shorter than this, but yeah, I would recommend this if you're into lighthearted, fun manga. Then I have another non-fiction book. This is The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat by Oliver Sacks. Okay, so this book is a collection of various sort of strange neurological conditions that various doctors sort of have kept accounts of, and Oliver Sacks himself is a neurologist, and so he has a special interest in these cases. Follows various different stories. So the one that's in the title, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat, is about a guy who lost the ability to recognize just anything, like his own feet. wouldn't understand the concept of a foot anymore. And various everyday objects as well. He just completely forgot what they were, what the whole notion of them were, and he often mistook them for something completely different, which is why he mistook his wife for a hat. So overall, I really enjoyed it. It was really interesting to learn more about these different conditions, and it's a really well told book as well, so I would definitely recommend it if you're into this sort of thing. Next, I have a YA contemporary. This is Rain and Delilah's Midnight Matinee by Jeff Zentner. Now, you might recognize this author's name if you've watched some of my previous videos, because he wrote The Serpent King, which is my favorite book of last year, of 2019, and one of my favorite books in general. I simply adore that book, and so I was very excited to pick up his newest novel. This came out, well, it came out in 2019. The two main characters are two best friends who have a very unique hobby in which they are the hosts of a horror commentary show where they watch really bad horror movies and then they basically talk about them in a funny way. So they themselves dress up as characters. They dress up as, I think it was vampires, and they have their own pseudonyms and sort of character personas for this show, and they also kind of make skits that go along with the different movies. And so I think it's every Friday or every Saturday night that this show is on, they pick a different movie and they basically comment on, you know, why was it bad, why was it good, and things like that. One of the girls' father, who abandoned her and her mother when she was really young, he was really into these old bad horror movies, and he had a massive collection of these DVDs, and so she grew up watching them, and she has this sort of small hope in her heart that maybe, you know, one Saturday night he will stumble upon this channel and see her talking about something that he used to really like and hopefully connect them together again. I'm not gonna spoil anything about how that goes. I really did enjoy this book. It was just, I guess my expectations after reading The Serpent King were so high that this was just such a more lighthearted story than his previous book. But don't get me wrong, it was a really great book. It's just, you know, I kind of couldn't help but compare it to The Serpent King in my mind as I was reading it, and, you know, it just doesn't have that depth and that sort of hit, I think, that The Serpent King has, but it is very good in its own right, and so, you know, if you're into YA contemporary, I would definitely recommend this. Next, I have Stormfront by Jim Butcher. This is the first book in the Dresden Files series that I've been meaning to get to for a very long time. This follows Harry Dresden, who is a wizard detective. So he's basically like Sherlock Holmes, but with magic. So he is able to take on the really strange cases that normal detectives, normal police officers can't handle, because they don't know much about the magical world that sort of intertwines with the real world. But he is a wizard detective, and so he takes on these cases, and that's what happens in this book. He investigates a particular case, and obviously a lot of different characters and different other plot lines sort of come together, and it is an opening for a much bigger story. It was funny. I did like the character, even though he can be a bit misogynistic in places as a character. There were a lot of female characters in this book, which I appreciate, but the fact that every time there was a female character, the way he talked about these characters when he was introducing them was just a bit, you know, he didn't talk like that with the male characters, really, that he came across. It was specifically the female characters. But anyway, that's just a character, you know, it's kind of that sort of character, so if that bothers you, then maybe, you know, don't pick up the series. But it didn't bother me as much to stop me from continuing on. So I will definitely try. I have the second book as well. I bought them at the same time, so I will definitely continue with the series and hopefully like the next books more than I like this. But, you know, it's a decent start to a huge urban fantasy series, so yeah, I'm excited to see what the Dresden Files has in play next. Okay, next I have a novella by one of my favorite authors, Brandon Sanderson, and that is Edgedancer. So Edgedancer is, I think it is part of the Stormlight Archive series. So I think it's supposed to be 2.5 of the series, so perfect reading order would be after you read the second book in the series, then read Edgedancer, and then read Oathbringer. I haven't yet read Oathbringer, so to me it's like it actually fit perfectly. So Edgedancer takes place in the whole Stormlight universe, and it does obviously make a lot more sense if you've read any of the books in the Stormlight archive than if you just picked it up out of nowhere. I think you could still enjoy it, but you just won't be able to figure out all the different like intricacies. It's obviously a Cosmere novel as well, so there's even more links there, but basically Edgedancer follows this teenage character called Lift, who some time ago was granted her wish to never grow up, and so she's perpetually stuck. I think she's about 12 or something like that. She's perpetually stuck as a preteen, and she is obviously therefore pretty immature, and she does have some special powers. She calls her special abilities her awesomeness, right? So she channels her awesomeness when she does magic and things. She's also really into food and pancakes. That's what I remember from this. Yeah, it obviously follows a subplot of a bit of her journey. Obviously, if you've read the Stormlight Archive, unfortunately, you know, it's been a really long time since I read the first and the second book, and so some parts of it kind of fell flat for me, or I just didn't really remember the connection, so I'm definitely planning on rereading the entire series at some point. So yeah, definitely recommend checking that out if you haven't read it yet. Next is another novella. This is The Black Tides of Heaven by Ji Yang. This is the first part in a duology of novellas. They're called twin novellas because this story follows two twins. So the first book is mostly in the perspective of one of the twins, and then the second book I assume is in the perspective of the second twin. I've only read this first one though. I gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars. I love the world that this was set in, and I just think the whole concept is super interesting. So like I said, this story follows two twins who are sold while they were really young. While they were children, they are sold to a grand monastery to the monks, and one of them has a very special power. They both have special abilities, but one of them is considered more the special child. Their mother basically only expected one child, the one who is the more special one, but then she got twins, and yeah, she gave both of the children up to the monks in the grand monastery, and they grow up there. I'm not gonna go into a lot of things because it is a very short book and I don't want to spoil things, but the thing that I found the most interesting about this book is that these children are genderless when they are born, and they get to decide their gender at around age 12 or 13 or something like that, and I thought that part was so well done and so cool, and I totally just... yeah, that was, I think, one of my favorite parts of the story, but the whole world is really interesting, so I'm really curious to read the second part of the story as well. The next book is a literary fiction slash thriller. I'm not entirely sure how to describe it, but it does have a little bit of thriller in it. This is The Unseen World by Liz Moore. So this made it onto my favorite books of last year, but I haven't yet gotten the opportunity to talk about it in a recent reads video, so that's why I'm talking about it here, even though I read it quite some time ago. But this follows the story of Ada, who is the daughter of a computer scientist who is working on a very important, at the time, AI software in the 80s. This takes place in the 80s, so it was very new technology at the time. And at the beginning of the book, they discover that Ada's father is suffering from Alzheimer's. Her father is her entire world. She is homeschooled, so she goes with him to the lab, and just everything about her world just revolves around her father. And so you can imagine that this news is devastating for both her and her father. And a part of the story is that once her father is diagnosed with Alzheimer's, he leaves Ada a floppy disk with a piece of code, like an encoded message that she tries to, or she will eventually try to decipher in time. It was a very slow and atmospheric read. It really transported you back to that time, even though obviously I wasn't alive in the 80s. It gave you that kind of melancholic feeling almost. The writing is beautiful in this as well, and there is a part of mystery slash thriller elements to it as well, with Ada finding out the truth of her father's secrets. There are more secrets that he kept from her. It was a beautiful book, and I would highly recommend this just to anyone, really. Like, it's just such a book that I think would appeal to pretty much anyone. So Okay, second to last book in this video is another novella by Brandon Sanderson, and that is Snapshot. So I realized I hadn't read this. I thought I read most of his novellas, but apparently I haven't. So I read this close to the end of last year, and I loved this. This was such a well-executed novella that, you know, it didn't matter that it was short. It was so well written and so well done. Again, this is kind of a detective story about two guys who are trying to solve a crime. The thing about this world is that the police officers can recreate the day in which a specific crime or murder has taken place, and they can go inside of that world and follow the people involved in the crimes and sort of try to piece together what happened while actually following the crime itself. If that makes any sense. Maybe I'm not explaining this right, but that's kind of the magic system of this world, that they are able to relive certain days where certain events have taken place, and they can transpose themselves into those worlds, into those days. It was really well done. I read it in one sitting and I loved it. The two characters are also really funny, and like there's a lot of banter going on between them, and it was just like generally a super enjoyable read. So yeah, 5 out of 5. No question. Okay, and the last book in this video, I'm sorry it was such a long video, but I had a lot of books to tell you guys about. But the last book, and my favorite book that I've read recently, is Soul of the Sword by Julie Kagawa, and this is the second book in the Shadow of the Fox trilogy. So the first book is called Shadow of the Fox, and as you know, that was my favorite book, or one of my favorite books of 2018, but it did take me quite a bit to get to the second book. But I love this. 5 out of 5 stars. This was so much better than the first one, but also like equally, like okay, words. So obviously I can't get into details because I don't want to spoil the story for you, the story of the first book, but the whole trilogy follows a kitsune, which is a character who can shapeshift as a fox, and a samurai assassin, as they pretty much try to save the world. There is this scroll that can be used by demons to destroy the world, and thousands of years ago this scroll was split into 3 pieces and hidden throughout this world so that no one can have the whole scroll and destroy the world. And as you can imagine, these characters are sort of involved in the whole thing, and the main character, the kitsune, is trying to move this piece of scroll to a different place at the start of the first book, and then the samurai assassin is actually assigned to steal the scroll as well, and they end up together on this quest, but they don't know about the secrets that both of them hid. It's a journey. It's an anime. It's amazing. So I thought this book was a lot better paced. There was so much action going on, like all the time. It was great. There was always something going on, and it was also a lot more interesting, a lot more deep, I think. We also got a few more perspectives than in the first book, and I thought the climax of this was awesome. There was, again, is so sort of massive for this world, and there's so much cool mythology, like Japanese mythology. Obviously this is based on Japanese mythology and Japanese culture, and I loved it. This is definitely one of my favorite series, my favorite fantasy series now, and the third book is coming out, I think, this year in April, and I'm definitely pre-ordering that because I want to read that as soon as possible and finish this series. Okay, so here is the stack of books that I've read recently that I can obviously show you because the rest were Kindle or audio books. And yeah, let me know if you've read any of these books and what you personally thought of them, or if any of them sound interesting to you. Also let me know, and of course I will leave links to all of the books that I've talked about in this video down in the description. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please do remember to like and subscribe. It really does help me out a lot. But yeah, I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Bye!